The last validation I want to show you here gets to two problems that I want to show you. It's the question of integers and numbers in general. So we were using inside of here next integer. You could be using doubles or something like that if you're trying to input dollar amounts or something like that from your application. But up top, when I ask for IP address, the next thing I do is ask for next integer. Let me show you a little potential problem with that. So when I go ask for the integer, I think we saw it before. On a guest, I can say, welcome guest, IP address, and the integer, if I don't put in something, it kills my whole program. I can deal with that through exceptions. I can deal with that with loops and exceptions. But it's actually kind of sort of worse than that. Because when I say next and don't say next line, it doesn't clear out all of the values that I'm getting inside of the input from there. So let me show you real quick what I mean by that. If I'm going to go back to here, now I don't want you to make this change. I want you to leave your code the way it is. But I'm going to change the next line up here to be next, all the way up at the top for my start of my application. This is going to make it easy because now instead of saying 1, 2, or 3, I can say garbage to garbage, garbage to garbage, garbage, with the spaces inside of there. And because I hit next, you can see the sequence of what happens is it says I put in the garbage. It says please choose again. It says what type of customer are you? Enter 1, 2, 3 for employee, and it comes back around. But it did not pick up the 2 or the other garbage that was inside of here. So if I was trying to say, for instance, later on, my first name was Otto von, because I'm Otto von Bismarck. If I use next, it would only ever pick up my first name as being Otto. The space gets kicked off to the next one, and then it gets that input gets thrown away as it comes around to the next cycle. So next can be a really tough thing to use in the scanner unless you absolutely know the input's correct all the time. You have to really trust that the user's going to be perfect every time, which you can never trust the user's going to be perfect every time. Maybe a computer system you'd trust a little bit more, but I'm not going to trust the user. So that's why I'm recommending you always use next line. So to that effect, if I leave it to be next line, let me stop my run right there. In my places where I get an integer, I want to, any number I should say, I want to be able to validate that in a very similar way. So I have my method down here for get required input. I'm going to create a common pattern inside of this. So private, say int, get integer inside of there. I have a scanner in, and I have a prompt that's going to come in. The main structure of this is going to be the same. I'm going to have an integer that I'm going to return. All right, and while it's true, I'm going to go ask for that integer. And then return input when I'm all said and done. So that core part of it's going to be the same. What's going to be different here is I am going to do the prompt and the input. So I'm going to copy and paste those on there. I'm going to prompt you. I'm going to get the input, except for the input's not going to be that. So let me change this real quick. The input's going to be a string. We'll just call it value. That's what they're going to input as a value. Now, there is no method in Java that will allow me to say, is this an integer? Because there's a method in Java to convert it to an integer. So I could have a method that says, is this an integer? And if so, convert it, which means I would have to convert it 2 times. Or I can just say, convert this thing, and if there's a problem, tell me. And that's what Java has chosen to do. So I can say input is equal to integer, capital I integer, dot parse integer, parse int, of a string, which is going to be value in this case. And at that point, we can say break. So if this line of code runs, then it worked and my work will continue on. If this line of code doesn't run, it will cause an exception and I need to deal with that. Now we'll come back to that in a second. I just want to show you this in action, the way this is going to work. So if I go back up to the get number of visits right here, excuse me. What I can do instead is say get integer scanner, and let me take this prompt, pass it over right there. Actually, let me even get fancier here. All right, so IP address, number of visits. Thanks, now give me that. So I'm going to say get integer here. Now, really, I've not improved my code at all yet because I still have the exception if I don't type it in properly. But let me just show you. For a guest, I can do the IP address, I can do an integer, and it works just fine. It gets the integer. If I do it wrong, I do the IP address, I do something that's not an integer, I still get the exception. Except for now, I'm getting a number format exception for the input string this, which instead of just input mismatch exception, which was kind of a confusing one. Again, I don't love those extra features of the scanner. You can use them if you want to. And you can use them in the same pattern here if you want to. I just like to get strings and manipulate the strings because then it clears out the whole buffer, clears out the whole line for me. All right. So instead, what I can do here to make this work is I use the exception handling mechanism, which you might not have seen much about in Java yet, and you'll understand it more as you code more. But a try statement says, I'm going to attempt to do this line, and if anything goes wrong, the catch statement is going to catch this type of exception and allow you to do something in response. And so the something in response is, by the way, I need to move this break up here. Sorry. Real quick, I'll explain that in a second, is system.out.println integer is required. So I'm just going to do a prompt here. So the way this code works is I'm going to keep looping for until it's true. I'm going to prompt you, hey, give me an integer, and you give me a string. I'm going to take that string and turn it into an integer. If it works, I'm going to break out of the loop because I got an integer, and I'm going to return it to you. If it doesn't work, it's going to cause this exception, which is going to say integers required, and then you're going to loop back around and keep asking until you get an integer. Okay, that's what this code does here right away. So if I go run, I can say guest, IP address, how many times have I visited the site? I don't put anything, integer is required. I put not an integer, integer is required. I put a ridiculously big number that's way bigger than an integer can possibly store. I get integers required. I put in a reasonable number, and then I get the answer. So that is validation of an integer. I just want to point out here, you absolutely could have kept this together real quick. And let me comment this line out real quick. And comment this line out real quick, sorry. And I could have said input is equal to in.next int. I could do this. It would work in a similar way where if I say IP address, I put nothing inside of there, nothing inside of there, nothing inside of there. It's not doing anything, it's just hitting enter. Where now you see it put it, oh my gosh, it's in this terrible loop of failure, and oh my gosh, it's going crazy. And it's actually, you can see it's growing and growing and growing and growing because it never has actually found what it's looking for. It's looking for an integer over and over and over again. And that's why I recommend, the only way you can do this is to kill it and stop it. That's why I recommend this alternative approach. Getting the line as a full as opposed to next int. Because while you can say next int, I can say next byte short int, I can say next double float or whatever, those can all happen, but I can just as easily get a string every single time and then parse it into whatever I want to here. I can do double.parse double. I can do float.parse float. I can do whatever parsing I want inside of here. And so this is what I would recommend if you're going to get numbers and go through and load this stuff. All right, so that should cover most of the data types you need. That should cover your full application. And if you break up your application like I've broken up my application, hopefully you can piece it together and pull these things together fairly seamlessly. Now, I am asking you to do a lot of different things. I'm asking you to code small bits of pieces. I'm asking you to put a lot of logic together. I'm asking you to use your inheritance hierarchy that was there already. I'm asking you to think about abstractions, both from designing from the bottom up and the top down. It's not really that I'm asking you to do all this stuff. The problem's asking you to do all this stuff. But there is a lot of things moving along. So as you're looking through all this stuff, if you have questions, email them in. If you're still not sure, so let's set up a time. If you can't make it to the chat to share screens, email me and say, look at this at chat. If you're still not sure, say, hey, maybe we can share screens sometime and make this stuff happen. That's really the best way for you to learn, is to follow the pattern here, mimic what I've got going on, build the code exactly what I've got going on. Look at the code I've shared. Don't copy it, but see how yours is the same or different. Get my demo working and then try it on your own. If you have troubles with either part of it, again, reach out for help. You shouldn't be struggling more than maybe a half an hour on any one of these concepts. Not total, but if you're working on the same problem for more than a half an hour, take a break, seek some help. Maybe give it a fresh shot, but certainly don't struggle on it for hours on end. This is something that you do need to work through it. You do need to try and solve problems. You need to come up with issues and roadblocks, but you shouldn't be stopped for too long. All right, so best of luck. Hope to see you this weekend, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what you can make of these command line applications.